What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Commentary for you, Jimmy Smith, Moody and MMA show. Quick recap of Joshua Ruiz 2. To me, Jimmy, just off the top, an impressive boxing match for Joshua. Not nearly a fight that's going to live up to the hype that it had. I was impressed how content he was to kind of work behind the jab. Was really impressed with Ruiz's corner, not letting that cut become a bigger factor because it looked like it was early on, and Joshua was content to kind of paw at it a little bit. But overall, I think it's an underwhelming fight, and certainly I don't think is going to have a lot of people clamoring for a third installment.
No, it won't. But look, here's the deal. This is one of those things where if you're a fight fan, a casual fight fan, a casual boxing fan, and I gave you an Anthony Joshua and said, beat an Andy Ruiz Jr., you'd say, well, jab and move, I guess. And that's what he did. That's the interesting part to me about this fight is if this were a video game, all you would ask is which button is jab. And I'm 6'6", you're 6'2", you hunch down anyway. You're facing an immobile target, carrying an extra 20 pounds, very flat-footed. All you have to do is jab and move and throw the occasional right hand, and you're going to win. And that's what he did. So in terms of will anybody be clamoring for a rematch? No. But if I'm Anthony Joshua's trainer, if I'm his corner, if I'm his handlers, whoever you want to put in that category, get the win, move on with your life. Don't look pretty. Don't try to knock this guy out. Don't try to get revenge. Do what you just did, and we'll move on to bigger and better things. It's almost better in a sense that this wasn't a crowd-pleasing kind of fight because they won't be clamoring for a third one. You can move on with your life and move on to bigger payday fights.
And if anybody hears our audio is different, Jimmy is actually out of town, so he's using a different mic. So if things sound a little bit weird, or if you can distinguish between me and Jimmy all of a sudden, that would be why. I agree with a lot of your assessment there. To me, I think Ruiz seemed a little bit frustrated. I think at the end of the fourth, at the end of the eighth, you kind of saw those wild swings. And interestingly enough, for a moment in the eighth, it looked like Joshua was going to get emotional, and he was going to let it get to him. But credit to him, regain composure very quickly, and honestly, just a very calculated pace, a very methodical fight. I hate to put it this way, but I really got the impression that he was just kind of putting rounds in the bag and creating more of a Hail Mary round for Ruiz. And as the fight got longer and longer, that Hail Mary knockout got less and less likely.
Just personally, man, I just want to say this personally to anybody who's listening. I don't like trashing commentators. I was a commentator. I don't like doing that. But and I had some criticisms with this commentary, especially when they started going after one another about him saying he should switch camps. I thought that was really awkward. It was really kind of cringy. But comparing the end, I know what he's saying, comparing the end of a famous fight, Julio Cesar Chavez Sr., versus Meldrick Taylor, where he knocked him out in the 12th round with actually, technically, I think 2 seconds left in the 12th round in a fight that he was losing. One thing was Chavez in that fight was landing big punches as the fight progressed. He wasn't winning rounds, but he was hurting Taylor throughout that fight. Ruiz never was able to find that distance to land punches, to build up to where he might have a hurt, worn out, tired fighter in front of him in round 12. Knockouts rarely come from nowhere. Sometimes you're a big puncher, you catch that big punch, whatever. But generally speaking, you chop an opponent down at least a little bit before you land the knockout punch. Ruiz had no way in past the jab, wasn't able to land enough big punches that Joshua might be softened up later in the fight. The frustrating thing about this fight is whenever you train a fighter for a rematch, let's say you win a football game by running the ball, and they run the ball and run the ball and run the ball, and you win the football game. If you play that team again, you have to assume they're going to stop the run. They're going to load the box. They're going to make it harder to run the ball. You have to come up with other game plans. If you're Ruiz, you have to assume Joshua's going to improve his jab and try to keep you at a distance and add a little footwork. You have to improve too. The loser always improves, but as the winner, you have to anticipate those improvements and make improvements of your own. And I didn't see an improved Andy Ruiz Jr. I didn't see a guy, especially when we talk about his weight all day, he was much heavier, but I didn't see a guy who added tools to counter the tools Joshua might have improved. And that was a disappointment to me. That really was.
I guess setting up going forward, we've talked in the pre-show about, Fury. Do you think anything is going to happen now going forward between Wilder, whoever you throw next? Did Anthony Joshua do anything to put fear into anyone's heart with this fight, or was it just the solid performance he needed to get by?
He didn't scare anybody, especially Wilder or Fury. But what he did is set himself up as the next big money fight for either one of those guys. That's what he did. He just need to get back in the win column, and Wilder Fury 2 happens. Let's say it's a blowout for one fight or the other, meaning they don't want a rubber match necessarily. He's the next big money fight, and that's it. So when I say his people, his handlers should say, look, win this fight. We're worried about being pretty later. We're moving on to bigger things. Who cares? That's what I mean. He just needed to put himself back in the win column, put Ruiz behind him, and set himself up for big money fights. Did he tactically display anything that scares either one of those guys? No. I don't think he displayed anything tactically that scares anyone in the division. An improved jab for sure. But for fighters like Fury and Wilder who know how to get around it, who have range, who are hard to out jab, that's not going to scare them. But you want a big money fight, you got to include Joshua in that mix.
To the other side of that, is this the last big fight you think we see out of Ruiz after this performance?
He has enough of a name that he might have some interesting fights, but it might be his last shot at the trifecta right now, which is Wilder, Fury, and Wilder, Fury, and Joshua. That's a trifecta right now. I don't think he touches that, but he made enough of a name that he might fight another heavyweight, and people will tune in. It might be. I don't know if it certainly won't be a pay per view, but it could be on a pay per view. It wouldn't be the main event. It could be a PBC type thing. I'd tune into free TV to watch Andy Ruiz. I think he built up enough of a name that he might have some decent paydays in his future. But as far as fighting for a heavyweight title, a real heavyweight title, this is probably it.
Well, we will revisit this in full podcast form. We appreciate you guys checking it out, and we will be back very shortly with more commentary.